probably wondering why they've invited some cynical old crime prevention person from the TfL along, you know, to talk about a subject for which, you know, for our organisation is sort of tantamount to murder, really. And it's sort of, you know, to come here and talk a thing where all day is going to be talking about a subject which for us is virtually taboo is quite an interesting scenario, I think. But I'm grateful anyway. I hope it wasn't just devil's advocate as well, but we'll see. Yeah, so I've called it Is There Space for Graffiti? You've probably all seen stuff like that. The fact is, you can see from these images that it's a subject very close to the heart of our organisation, but not in a good way. So there's three reasons why that is for us. The first reason is that our customer insight team, who survey our customers on a regular and sort of very widespread basis across the transport network, tell us unequivocally that our customers don't like it. They don't like graffiti at all. And that's actually borne out by the regular fear of crime surveys that we carry out, that consistently tell TfL that it varies between 25 and 30%, but that's consistent. Between 25 and 30% of the people surveyed say that their choices about using public transport, what types of public transport they use, are influenced by feelings of a lack of security. And they tell us that one of the things that contribute to this is actually graffiti. Second reason is that responding to that clear message from our customers, and as Lorraine alluded to, it's expensive. It really is expensive. I mean, as long ago as 2003, it was costing London Underground over £8.6 million a year to clean the paint off trains. And that figure doesn't actually include train out of service itself and the panel degradation that occurs when they're consistently cleaning those aluminium panels and so on. It was actually estimated that to replace a half of the scratched glass on the rolling stock would cost us £10 million. And of course, if we did do that, it would be scratched again the next day. And so that presents us with all sorts of issues. In fact, cleaning buses was also estimated at costing between 10 million and 15 million pounds a year. And that was 5 years ago that is the complaint. That's an expensive business. Of course, the third reason is the potential for disruption. Not only are the graphers actually putting themselves at risk, and as you probably know, several have been killed on the tube whilst doing graffiti. In fact, Stereophonics, you read a song about it, haven't you? See how down with the youth I am? It's incredible, isn't it? But of course, the trains can't run. The trains can't run while we suspect that people are on the tracks. And so, you know, the resultant potential for traffic disruption is obvious, and of course that disruption costs London potentially enormously if people come here to work. So our staff, you've got to think about our staff, because they often have to put themselves in really dangerous positions to actually go and search for these people in the tunnels and so on. So you can see that our involvement with graffiti comes from a really specific standpoint. You know, one where we must strive to prevent it, and we must reduce its impact on our customers and our staff where we can't prevent it. And of course, early on in our dealings with graffiti, those of us involved in reducing crime on the network realised that laying down a challenge to the people that are involved in graffiti on our network meant engaging in a war that we couldn't win. And unfortunately, we weren't fast enough really in working with our police partners to get our communication strategies to align. And the results of press releases like this one actually proved to be very expensive for TfL. And so we decided to commission some evidence-based research to look at the motivations for graffiti and why these individuals actually get involved in it. And by doing that, we try to determine what works against it. And also, you know, in doing that, make our own efforts and those of the police that we pay to secure our network, you know, that much more effective. So what we learned actually told us that anything that we do can be completely undermined and often negatively impacted upon by well-meaning, but too often from our perspective, rather misguided policies and projects in the broader community that the transport network actually serves. So therein, you know, that's the perennial dilemma, isn't it, in relation to graffiti. By necessity, we run a controlled transport system. We have to do that. And of course, if you then extrapolate that, you know, you can see that perhaps the more liberal-minded amongst us might fear a move to this sort of security-obsessed, draconian sort of general society where there are no civil liberties at all. You know, where does that continuum actually end? We hear, don't we, that we hear this sort of general cry, the kids have to express themselves. You know? Give the kids a legal wall where they can spray to their heart's content. Give them the space they need for street art. These are all the things we hear. So what's the reality? Well, that's what today's all about, I'm sure, but is it about kids' free expression? Is that what we're talking about here? Is it about street art, whether it be for regeneration purposes or just for the sake of kids being able to do what they like? Well, we had some NCAMs research. I believe there's someone here from NCAMs today, or sorry, Keep Britain Tidy. Well, when it was called NCAMs, did some research back in 2008, and it was called Good Graffiti, Bad Graffiti. And that told us that only 1% of the graffiti in the UK falls within the description of the general description of street art, and that the rest of it was tags or scribble. And taggers themselves told us that generally it's not kids that are doing this. It's about adults on a mission to do as much damage as possible and get away scot-free. That's what the taggers told us. And our own research showed us that wherever a legal wall exists, street furniture and other property is hit for a radius of a half a mile around that wall. And of course, enforcement is impeded in that area because no one can be stopped for going equipped anymore. So, and our research also told us actually that even graffiti that could be classified as street art attracts other, less artistic attention, such as the Banksy on that screen there. That demonstrates it quite well. That was one down at Old Street, and that's actually on one of our little substations that we have to produce power for the underground. And when that Banksy was done, actually, there was lots of hand wringing. Because our policy is to clean it off, all graffiti, clean it off. And then if it gets hit again, clean it off again. And by doing that, we've actually drastically reduced attrition rates over the last sort of 5 to 8 years. But of course, this, whilst we were wringing our hands as to whether or not we should paint out a Banksy, one of our prolific graffiti taggers, called Daniel Halpin, got up there and did that to it, which is not only not artistic, it's actually offensive too. And that forced our hand, it got painted out. So, to finish off, really, that sort of brings us really to the key questions, I think, Lorraine, that you were talking about. You know, who is impacted upon by graffiti? Well, we know the answer to this at TfL for our customer. But what about, you know, does the broader community know who exactly is being impacted upon by graffiti? You know, what type of graffiti actually impacts upon? You know, as I said, we at TfL know this. And NCAMs came up with their statistics about how much of it is actually regarded as street art, which was accepted more than tax and scribble. But say it was only a tiny proportion that was actually street art in the NCAMs research. How does graffiti impact on the fear of crime in the broader community? And does the type of graffiti matter ultimately, when someone ultimately has to pay to clean it off? And given the costs and current austerity, you know, is painting or scratching graffiti an activity that society can afford to tolerate or to fight? So these are all important questions without answer to which, you know, I suspect that here in the UK, our society will always struggle to develop the cohesive approach that Lorraine was referring to, and a sort of constant response, a normalised response across the agencies. And hopefully by the end of today, you know, we'll come up with a few of those answers, and I'll be listening really intently.